It is the year 1307, and Switzerland is not at all as we know it today. Back then, it was merely a province under the control of the Austrian royal house of the Habsburgs, who ruled with an iron fist. In this complicated context, we meet Wilhelm Tell, a peasant skilled with the crossbow who is subjected to a terrible punishment. An apple is placed on his son Walter's head. If Wilhelm succeeds in the shot, he will be freed of all charges, but what will happen if he fails? 3 days before these events, Wilhelm was at his farm in the Swiss mountains, carrying out his tasks, alongside his son. At that moment, he stops to observe his shield, bearing the symbol of the Crusaders. It was the last time he raised his crossbow to kill a man, and he intends to remain that way. Unfortunately, fate has other plans for him. Not far away, a group of Austrian soldiers takes refuge in an inn to shelter from an approaching storm. Though in truth, the real storm is them. Shortly after, Konrad Baumgarten, a local farmer, hears the cries of a woman inside the inn. Konrad infiltrates the inn and discovers that the woman screaming is his wife. Governor Wolfschott has killed her. Taking advantage of the governor being distracted in the bath, Konrad decides to do what must be done. He exacts his revenge, but now he is pursued by a band of soldiers. In the midst of the storm, the farmer reaches the port and plans to escape immediately by boat. The locals forbid him from doing so because of the weather conditions, though he prefers to risk it in the raging waters rather than face the soldiers. Wilhelm, who is present at the scene, cannot help but feel sympathy for the farmer. After sending his son back home with his mother, Wilhelm boards the boat with Konrad, remarking that if there is anyone capable of navigating these waters, it is him. Meanwhile, Walter hides as best he can from Wolfschott's soldiers, who vent their anger on the locals for not finding Konrad. Upon hearing of the governor's death, King Albert I of Habsburg, regent of Austria, designates a new governor for Switzerland, Gessler, a man who compensates for his youth with unbridled brutality. Alongside him, Albert sends his niece Bertha with the intention that she marry his chief suitor, none other than Gessler himself. Bertha is not enthusiastic about the idea of marrying a violent man, but her uncle will not listen to any objections. Having survived the journey, Wilhelm meets his wife, Suna, who is tending to Konrad's wounds. Not without complaining, of course, it is not the first time her husband has risked everything to help someone in need, and it won't be the last. Amid his wife's annoyance, Wilhelm promises that he will return home sooner than expected. Changing the setting, we travel to Addinghausen Castle to meet its owner, a Swiss noble by the same name, and his heir, his nephew Rudens. During the characteristic Addinghausen ritual, Rudens refuses to drink from the cup, which enrages his uncle. His acts of disobedience have become too frequent, and he is tired of playing the noble when, in the eyes of the Austrians, they are little more than peasants. If he wants to become the next Lord of Addinghausen, he must do so with the approval of the Habsburgs. It is the only way to prosper. Although his uncle refuses to acknowledge him, it is also revealed that he has a secret romance with Bertha. Now, it is clear why there are so many references towards the Salzburgs. Returning to Wilhelm, he takes Konrad along with Werner and Gertrude Stufer, a noble marriage that agrees to hide the fugitive in their castle. Gertrude fantasizes about organizing a rebellion against the occupation. This is the limit that Werner dares not cross, for he has witnessed the cost of war when he fought in the Crusades alongside Wilhelm. Their debate is interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected visitor, Gessler. Forced to improvise, they disguise Konrad as a servant. With that done, Werner receives Gessler with all due honors. But the governor is not fooled and orders his men to search the castle. While they wait, Gessler fixates on Wilhelm's crossbow and consequently on Wilhelm himself. The protagonist has no other choice but to keep him entertained until the soldiers announce that the place is clear. However, Gessler turns to the servants and orders them to reveal any information they are hiding. Konrad lowers his gaze nervously while a drop of blood appears on his hand. At that moment, Wilhelm regains the governor's attention and makes it clear that he will not find who he is looking for here. Although Gessler finally withdraws, he orders his men to remain in the area. It is evident that the Stufer family is hiding something. Werner, indignant at being intimidated in his own home, leans towards his wife's call for rebellion. They must strike back before they are completely trampled upon. Wilhelm, however, appears reluctant to join the uprising. The only offer he makes is to take Werner and Konrad to Father of Altdorf, a priest who might act as a spokesperson for the unification of the Swiss people. Along the way, they witness both the abuse of power by the Austrians and the courage of the Swiss, exemplified by the elderly father of a farmer. The farmer flees upon the appearance of enemy reinforcements and is intercepted by Wilhelm's group. When, upon seeing his father being tortured, the farmer asks the protagonist to end his suffering, he complies. In doing so, they trigger a skirmish against the Austrian soldiers. Wilhelm and Werner fight side by side as in the old days. At the end of the battle, the farmer pays homage to his father's body. His name is Melchthal, the first rebel recruited for the cause. Upon arriving at Altdorf, they are greeted by a couple of corpses hanging with clear messages from the Austrians to anyone who dares challenge them. Following the trail of blood, Gessler discovers the massacre at the farm. And to his surprise, most of the dead are his own men. In his fury, he comes across an arrow that he recognizes well. Returning to Wilhelm, he leads his group with Father, a local priest who has opposed the Austrian occupation through faith. He assures them that most of the noble houses wish to free themselves from the Habsburgs. Even though the houses still doubt, the next day, a delegation sent by Gessler places a post in Altdorf with a helmet at its tip. All citizens passing by this post must bow in respect to the king. While the uprising takes shape, Wilhelm, however, decides to return home and fulfill the promise he made to his wife. Yet, she notices that he is not really present. His mind remains with his fellow rebels, while his heart is still undecided. Then she offers to fight by his side. After all, that is how they met during the Crusades. On the other hand, Rudens has to endure Gessler's displays of power toward his future wife, Bertha. She struggles to hide her displeasure, but she cannot oppose the king's desires, not as long as he continues to reign over Switzerland. Therefore, she asks Rudens to remain true to his blood and fight for his homeland. This is the way for their love to prosper in Altdorf. Walter fixates on the notorious post. As his friends bow in reverence, he stands still, aware of the danger. Wilhelm prepares to take his son with him, but the governor's men have already discovered him and order him to kneel. Wilhelm categorically refuses, and to his surprise, the entire town unites behind him. His appeal is being carried out. In the midst of the conflict, Gessler himself appears and orders the protagonist to obey. Wilhelm responds by asking for forgiveness on the condition that he does not kneel, knowing he would refuse. The governor displays the arrow from the crime scene, asking if Wilhelm is as skillful with the crossbow as they say. Amid the silence, Walter cannot help but defend him. Consequently, the governor challenges the master marksman to shoot an apple placed precisely on his son's head. If he succeeds, the charges against him will be lifted. If not, both he and his loved ones will lose their lives. Despite the pleas of the peasants, including those from Father, Gessler continues with the punishment. Then, Rudens, tired of the indifference, raises his sword against the governor. Unfortunately, the soldiers soon subdue him and arrest him for treason. The next to face the consequences is Konrad, admitting that he killed Wolfshot and offering his life in exchange for Wilhelm's. The governor accepts the deal, but only the part about taking Wilhelm's life, for he still demands that the protagonist perform the shot. Tired of the continuous shedding of blood, Wilhelm accepts the punishment, not without assuring his wife that his son will live. With that said, the marksman loads one of his 2 arrows and fires. Amid the crowd, not even Gessler can hide his surprise. Then Bertha reminds him with false courtesy that she had promised to forgive Wilhelm if he hit the target. The governor congratulates the ballistics master, although he inquires about the second arrow he had prepared. In exchange for the truth, he promises to pardon Wilhelm's life if that is the case. Wilhelm clarifies that if he had killed his son with the first arrow, the second was destined for Gessler. The governor smiles, knowing he has found the perfect excuse to arrest the man who challenged his pride. This incites chaos among the onlookers, while Father releases Rudens from the guards and asks him to gather an army. A war is brewing. Returning to Addinghausen, Rudens finds his uncle on his deathbed. The elderly man listens to a repentant heir ready to represent the true values of his house. Following tradition, Rudens takes the cup and prepares his men to end the Austrian occupation. With this done, he presents himself at a secret meeting between the Stufer family and the other rebellious nobles, convincing them that now is the time to unite. Changing the scene again, Wilhelm is transported by boat across the same lake where he once took Conrad. That very night, a storm rages. The boat is battered against a rocky cliff. Emerging from the hold, Bertha takes the keys and frees Wilhelm. Together, defying the imminent threats, they leap from the boat and head into the forest, where they are intercepted by allied hunters who inform them that Gessler is on his way to the town of Kusnacht. Bertha, who knows these lands like the back of her hand, offers to guide Wilhelm there. Thanks to her, the protagonist reaches Gessler's caravan. After provoking a distraction, he waits patiently for the governor to appear and greet him, as only he can do. With his crossbow in hand, Wilhelm continues his assault from above, while Gessler uses his own men as a shield when his position is compromised. Wilhelm escapes with Bertha's help, leaving Gessler more frustrated than ever, especially since he must answer to King Albert, who is not pleased with his management in Switzerland. In addition to allowing a rebellion, Gessler has also lost his niece after she tended to Wilhelm's wounds. Bertha parts ways with him in an effort to dissuade her uncle from supporting Gessler. For his part, Wilhelm returns to his family and allies at the moment they need him most. It turns out that during an attack on the Austrian garrison in Altdorf, the rebels were exposed due to a traitor, and Gertrude paid with her life. Shot down, Wilhelm offers his condolences to a despondent Werner. "They have beaten us," he laments. "But for all the more reason, they must press on in memory of Gertrude and all their fallen comrades." Meanwhile, Bertha arrives at King Albert's castle and attempts to show him another way of ruling. Unfortunately, the king ignores her message and prepares his troops to march on Altdorf, the epicenter of the rebellion. Moreover, Bertha is arrested for treason and sentenced to death. Her own cousins are sent to execute her. However, one of them ends up taking the life of the other to save her. After this, Bertha surprises Albert in his sleep and ensures that he never wakes again. Meanwhile, Gessler has entrenched himself in Altdorf, determined to resist until reinforcements arrive. Then a delegation of rebels, led by Wilhelm, presents itself at the town gates with the mission of making the governor see reason, or so it seems. As they keep him distracted while another group sneaks into the town through a secret tunnel at dawn. When the defenders prepare for the rebels' attack, they discover that the latter were already inside, disguised as priests. This marks the beginning of the assault on Altdorf, with Wilhelm's forces using their best weapon, the crossbow. The rebels inside the town manage to open the gates, while Rudin's army gains entry through the other side by force. Amid the chaos, Rudin faces Gessler in a duel from which only one will emerge victorious, or rather, neither will. At that moment, Werner has the opportunity to shoot Gessler, but he ends up helping Walter instead, a decision that costs him his life. Walter is taken prisoner, along with other civilians. The governor threatens to set them on fire if the rebels do not surrender. Just then, reinforcements for the king appear on the hill, further discouraging the rebels. However, the soldiers soon receive word that the king has died, and that there is no longer any sense in continuing the fight. Gessler watches in horror as his men withdraw, while Walter discreetly draws an arrow, the same one his father once shot at him. Defeated, the governor boasts that he will be replaced, and that Switzerland will remain under Austrian rule. An indomitable Wilhelm feels satisfied that he has killed him, even though his son reminds him that they are hunters, not savages. The rebels decide to spare Gessler's life, a punishment worse than death. Days later, as Wilhelm and his family bury their dead, Bertha arrives with a warning. Agnes, the daughter of King Albert, has assumed the crown of Austria with a clear objective: to take vengeance on the Swiss people. This marks the beginning of a new phase in the struggle for Swiss independence, and another challenge for the hero destined to become a legend, Wilhelm Tell. Deep research canvas. And the movie ends here. If you like the movie explanation, please like and subscribe it, and be a family for this channel.